I've read over 300 books on advertising and marketing, and I've learned 3 key lessons that now make me multiple millions per year. Lesson number 1, categorization is death. People don't have to consume your ads. In fact, they're looking for every reason not to read your ad. And this is actually their lizard brain at work. So whenever we encounter new information, our lizard brain is trying to quickly categorize that information based on whether it's something worth spending energy on. And guess what? Our lizard brain is extremely lazy. It doesn't want to do any work at all. So it's always trying to categorize new information as quickly as humanly possible so that it can simply go back to just doing nothing. And this is why whenever someone gets served a new ad that they've not seen before, they are immediately trying to, quote, categorize that ad into a known bucket, which in their mind is labeled, I've seen this before. That way they can, quote, know the ending without needing to spend any energy. They can know, oh, that ad is like that. I already know what that is, so I don't need to consume that ad. I don't need to read anymore. But here's the thing. If they cannot categorize the ad, then they have to search to find the ending. And the way they search is consuming more of the ad before they can move on. Since as humans, we do not like open loops. So if somebody sees something new, they have to explore what that new thing is so that they can make, quote unquote, sense of it. And it's then and only then can they move on. But if your ad is completely new, that means they have to consume all of your ad. They have to read your ad, watch your ad, whatever it is. Then they have to click the button to go to the next page. And if at every single point in your sales funnel, it's constantly something new and they can never categorize you as the same as something they've seen in the past, they're going to go all the way through your funnel and ultimately buy your product or service. As a side note, that's why cliffhangers are used in movies, because it makes you want to watch the next episode to see what happens next. Again, humans do not like open loops, and you can achieve this in your advertising if you don't allow your market to categorize you, which essentially forces, again, your prospects to consume your ad, then your funnel, then they buy. Now, here's how I achieve this outcome in my ad. I ask 2 key questions, which gives me all the information I need to never get categorized by my market. The first question is, what have they tried in the past, or what are they currently doing that isn't working? And a subsequent question to that is, why didn't that thing work, or why isn't that thing working? And the second question is, what types of sales messages, offers, ads, emails, whatever it may be, what type of sales messages are they exposed to on a daily basis? Now, the true answers to both of these questions give you the ammo that you need to be able to say something different, new, unique, and exponentially better, which also doubles as your appeal, so that your market can never categorize you and you ethically force them to buy. Lesson 2, explaining the real reason why what your market has tried failed is the cheat code to get them to buy your product or service. I found most people try to sell their product or service by showing how great it is and explaining why it's so amazing. And in theory, that kind of makes sense. However, every time I've done this, it's never worked for me. Instead, whenever I now write ads or try to sell anything, I first start with, like I said before, number 1, finding out what they've previously tried to solve their problem. And number 2, I figure out why it didn't work. Exactly the same as lesson 1 as I just explained. However, in this lesson 2, what I now do is I now explain to my prospects in my ads why what they've tried in the past hasn't worked. And I do it in a way that's 100% logical and it's backed up by facts. Now, ensuring the explanation is logical and backed up by facts is extremely important, since after you've finished your explanation, your market must think in their mind, yeah, that makes sense. And it's a very simple thought to think, I now completely understand why XYZ never worked in the past. And so now what do, right? In their mind, that's what they should be thinking. It makes sense to me why what I've tried in the past has failed. But with that being said, what do I now do? That outcome is key for lesson 2. And the reason why is because this now creates a void which your product or service can easily fill. It's almost like reverse selling. You kind of sell your product or service by first explaining the real reason they failed in the past, and then that nicely tees up your product as the perfect solution. And quite frankly, I've never found a more powerful and honestly easy way to sell my services than to do it in this reverse way, since it's almost like when you get the real reason correct, right? When you explain it in a way that genuinely makes your market go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I can see why what I've tried in the past didn't work. When they 100% believe that based on the real reason you provide them, it's almost like then they ask you to sell them in a way. They now have this thought to where it's like, okay, I know why what I've tried in the past has failed. I still want the outcome. And again, I can understand why what I've tried didn't work. Well, what's the solution? What's the better way? What's a better way to do it than the way that I did it in the past that clearly didn't work out? See what I mean? So now it's again created that void for your solution to just perfectly fit into. And the market is actively wanting to go to you to go, okay, well, what do I do? What should I do instead? And then that again is where your solution comes into play. And because you reverse sold the prospect in a way, the sale, actually getting the sale, getting the cash collected becomes so much easier. Lesson number 3, truth outweighs trust. So this concept I got from a great marketer by the name of Alan Zoltanic. Now, to explain this vital idea, I first need to explain market saturation, which quite frankly, at its most basic level, people means there's a lot of people marketing a similar product or service in a particular market, which makes that market, quote, aware. Saturation just means the market knows what's going on. And all markets eventually become saturated, which means they become sophisticated. In other words, saturation leads to sophistication. And the reason why is because as soon as one person has success in any particular industry, any given industry, the rest will follow. Everyone else will copy them, which will make it more saturated. And as more and more players enter that market, the market itself are exposed to more and more advertising messages, leading them to buy more and more products or services, making them more aware, which leads to them being more sophisticated. And that's the cycle of every single market. So it's not really a question of if a market is saturated or not, but rather how early are we in this market? Or another way to put it, the question is how saturated is the market, not if the market is saturated. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, here lies the issue with all sophisticated markets. They've all seen and heard claims being made before. Okay, they've seen people say, hey, I'll do this for you. Hey, I'll promise you XYZ. Hey, I'll get you this result. Or, hey, if you pay me XYZ, I'll deliver ABC. Or I'll promise you this product or service will get you this big, sexy outcome. These sophisticated markets have seen these messages time and time again. And the problem is, every time that they've engaged in a relationship with these types of people that have made these claims, they've never delivered on what they've promised. And so the market's trust over time becomes broken. So naturally, when the next person enters the market and says something similar, hey, I'll do XYZ for you, guess what the market's immediate response is? That's BS, or no, you won't, or whatever it is. And ultimately, they don't click the ad, book a call, or become a client, or buy the product. So instead, we have to, first of all, not be perceived as the same as everybody else, right? Which was lesson number one, categorization is death. You have to be seen as different. And number two, we have to rely on truth, not on trust. Since the market's trust has been broken, the trust is non-existent. In other words, if all we rely on is the market trusting our word, we will only ever convert the small percent who have either just entered the market, making them either naive and fresh, or they yet haven't had their trust broken, which for most markets is a tiny percentage, making it impossible to scale, since once you tap out that tiny percent in your market, there's no one left to buy your product or service, which is then going to result in you almost hitting a cap in your ads, in your scale, whatever it may be. And it's not because your market's too small, it's just that you're only appealing to the tiny percent of the market who hasn't yet had their trust broken. The way to break through this is to switch to relying on truth versus trust. Now, here's the difference between truth versus trust. Truth has an origin, whereas trust doesn't. In other words, truth has a source other than you that proves your claim to be true, whereas with trust, you are the source. So you might be asking, how does this apply in your advertising? Well, it boils down to the strength of your pitch or your mechanism. In other words, how easy is it to dispute your idea? If you think about this like a house built on sand versus a concrete slab, it's very easy for the house on sand to fall over, whereas it would take a tornado to make the house on the concrete slab just move in the slightest. Now, this applies whether the prospect's dispute is valid or not. This is really, really important. For example, if you say, we'll run your ads better than anyone else, that might actually be true. You may actually be able to run somebody's ads better than somebody else, but notice how easy it is for the prospect to dispute or dismiss your claim. And also notice how in that claim that I just made, I will run your ads better than anyone else, I'm the source. And remember, truth has a source that is not you, whereas trust, you're the source, which means the market has to trust you in order to believe the claim. But if you're in a sophisticated market, they don't have any trust, so they're not going to believe your claim. And so now you would have lost that prospect because now in their mind, they believe that you are no better than the ads they're currently running or the last agency they used or whatever it is that you're claiming, right? And obviously in this case, I'm claiming something about ads. But the bottom line is the prospect has now categorized you as the same as everybody else. And so until you present them a new idea that's stronger, they'll just simply write you off forever in their mind. Again, even if the original claim was true. This is why relying on adjectives, adjective-like words is never a good idea. Saying things like amazing or breakthrough or powerful or, this is the new best ever thing or whatever, all of these words and statements can easily be disputed as you are the source. You are the one telling them it's amazing. There's no strong foundation. So instead, the best way to rely on truth in your advertising is essentially to never tell your market that your product or service works or that it's the best or whatever. Instead, you want to show them. You want to show, don't tell. Since when you show someone something, by default, you are immediately relying on the truth since you're showing the logical reasoning behind why or how it works. And that is the truth behind the claim. And when you do this correctly, you create the ultimate quote conclusion in your market's mind, which is, oh yeah, that makes sense. That logical reasoning, because you're logically explaining, which is backed up by true facts, not trust, as to why what you're saying is true or what you're claiming is true. You're not relying on the market to trust your word. And this is the moment at which they will take action and buy your product or service. However, again, the only way to get there from my experience is to rely on truth versus trust. So I hope you found some value in this this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I will see you in the next video.